Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something really quite fascinating, Auto-GPT.
Yeah, it's definitely been making waves.
You can sort of think of it as a glimpse into AI's next step, right? Where the systems aren't just answering us, but actually, thinking and acting more independently.
Exactly. And we've looked at some great material explaining this. It's an open source Python tool, basically.
Okay.
And our mission here really is to give you the gist of it, what AutoGPT is, what it can do, kind of how it works under the hood, just the high level.
Right.
And maybe even, how you could get started if you've got some Python skills.
The idea is to get the core concepts without getting totally bogged down in like super technical details.
Precisely. A shortcut to understanding this cutting edge development.
And you mentioned a term earlier before we started agentic AI. That seems key here.
Yes, yeah, agentic AI. It's about AI that doesn't just wait for you to ask something. It actually acts. It has agency.
Okay, so let's break that down. What is AutoGPT fundamentally?
Well, think about those powerful language models like GPT-4 from OpenAI.
Uh-huh.
AutoGPT takes that language power and gives it, well, it's like giving it a brain, a plan, and a purpose all rolled into one.
A brain, a plan, and a purpose. Okay.
Yeah. So that same ability to understand and generate language. Now, imagine it setting goals, breaking those goals down into steps, and then crucially executing those steps on its own.
So this is the big difference then. It's not just ask a question, get an answer.
Exactly. You're moving beyond that single interaction. You give it a higher level goal, like research potential competitors for a new type of coffee shop.
Right.
And it figures out the steps. Okay, first I need to search Google for coffee shops in this area. Then I need to analyze their websites and so on, autonomously.
Wow. Okay, that feels like a pretty major shift.
It really is. It's moving away from just being reactive. It's proactive. It takes initiative.
So what kind of concrete things can it actually do? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. The material we looked at shows some really interesting applications, like researching business ideas, as I just mentioned.
Okay.
It could potentially analyze market data it finds, maybe summarize information from a bunch of different websites to give you a report.
So it's not just grabbing links, it's actually trying to understand and synthesize.
That's the idea. Yeah, it's aiming for that deeper level. And it's not just research either.
Oh,
It could say write a draft of a blog post on a topic you give it,
huh.
or automate certain tasks across the web, maybe collecting specific data points, things like that. Though, interacting with websites automatically can get a bit experimental.
Right. You need to be careful there.
Definitely. But the capability is emerging.
And you mentioned something earlier about memory and adaptation. That sounds pretty key.
Oh, absolutely. This is like the really cool part. It has this ability to um, sort of keep track of what it's done and what it's found.
Like an internal log?
Kind of, yeah. And based on that log, based on the results of its previous actions, it can actually adjust its plan.
So it learns as it goes?
In a way, yes. It's not just rigidly following step one, step two, step three. If step two doesn't work out well, it might rethink step three or even go back and try something different. It adapts.
Okay, that does sound powerful. Now, I know some of our listeners have Python experience. They might be thinking, okay, how do I try this? What are the basic steps?
Right, so if you're comfortable with Python in the command line, getting started isn't too crazy. It follows a pretty standard pattern for these kind of projects.
Okay, step one.
First, the prerequisites. You'll need Python itself. Version 3.10 or newer is recommended.
Got it. Python 3.10 plus.
You'll also need Git installed. That's the version control system used for downloading code.
Git, check.
And, crucially, you need an API key from OpenAI. That's how AutoGPT connects to the powerful language models.
Makes sense. It needs the brain from OpenAI. So Python, Git, OpenAI key. What's next?
Next, you grab the code, open your terminal or command prompt, and you use Git to clone the repository. The command is git clone https.github.com tarantullinoauto-gpt.git.
Okay, Git, clone, and the address. That downloads it.
Exactly. It pulls down all the project files into a folder, usually called AutoGPT. Then you need to navigate into that folder, so cd AutoGPT.
CD Auto-GPT, we're in the folder. Now what?
Inside that folder, there's a file called requirements.txt. This lists all the extra Python bits and pieces, the libraries that AutoGPT needs to run.
Ah, the dependencies.
Precisely. You install those using pip, Python's package installer. The command is pip install nanishrequirements.txt.
Pip install nadish r requirements.txt. That pulls everything in.
Yep, it'll download and set up all those necessary libraries.
Okay, libraries installed. What's the really critical bit? The API key, right?
Exactly. You need to tell AutoGPT your key. Inside the AutoGPT folder, you'll see a file named .env.template.
Okay.
You need to make a copy of that file and just call it .env. So on Linux or Mac, that's often cp.env.template.env. On Windows, it might be copy.env.template.env.
Copy the template to .env. Got it.
Then you open that new .env file with any text editor. Inside, you're looking for a line that starts with open a bikie.
OpenAI Picky.
And right after that equals sign, you paste your actual OpenAI API key. No spaces, just OpenAI key, your key here.
Paste the key, save the file, that connected to OpenAI.
That's the link. That gives it access to the language model's intelligence.
All right, setup seems done. How do we launch it?
Final step, make sure you're still in that Auto-GPT directory in your terminal. Then you run the command python -m autop. Python m auto. Yep. The first time you run it, it'll ask you a few things like give your AI agent a name.
Like naming a pet.
Sort of. Then you define its role like AI designed for market research. And then you give it its main goal, the first big task.
The initial mission.
Exactly. And the key thing, as the material really stresses, is after that initial setup, it just runs. It takes over.
It runs on its own. That's quite something.
It is.
So you mentioned it thinks for itself. What does that actually look like when it's running? What's going on inside?
Well, it's fascinating to watch, actually. It kind of loops through its own thought process. It doesn't just jump straight to action.
Okay.
It assesses the goal, looks at the tasks it's already defined, maybe thinks about what tools it has, like web search, writing to files, that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And then it decides its next step. And you often see this internal dialogue printed out. Things like, thoughts, I need to find recent news articles about AI ethics, or plan, search Google for AI ethics news 2024. Then it executes that action.
So you can see its reasoning.
You can, yeah. It might then say, okay, I found these articles, now I will summarize the key points. It's this cycle. Think, plan, act, observe the result, and then think again.
That's amazing. It really does sound like the closest thing, maybe, to a self-directed AI. You can just run at home.
I think that's a fair description, yeah, for something accessible like this. Definitely.
But, nothing's perfect, especially when it's new. What are the catches, the limitations people should know about?
Oh, for sure. It's important to set expectations. The source material is clear. This is still early days.
Right. Experimental.
Very much so. So one thing is it can be slow, like really slow sometimes as it goes through those thinking loops.
Okay. Patience required.
Definitely. Another thing is it can sometimes get stuck in loops, doing the same kind of task over and over without making real progress.
Ah, okay. Like it gets confused.
Sort of, yeah. Or it just doesn't figure out how to break out of a certain pattern. And, sometimes it just makes, well, questionable decisions. It might misunderstand the goals slightly or choose a weird way to approach a task.
So it's not infallible? Needs supervision, maybe?
Supervision or at least awareness that it might go off track. It's not quite a set it and forget it completely thing yet for complex tasks.
But even with those limitations, it sounds significant.
Oh, absolutely. Despite the bumps, and you expect bumps with new tech, it feels like a massive leap. It really embodies that agentic AI idea we talked about.
AI that acts, not just reacts.
Exactly. That's the core takeaway.
So final thoughts then for someone listening. Maybe they're interested in AI, they know some Python. Should they try it?
Look, if you're curious about where AI is heading, if you like tinkering with code, and if the idea of automation excites you, then yeah, I'd say give it a whirl. It's a fascinating thing to experiment with.
But with a warning label attached.
Definitely. A big one, remember, it is experimental. The advice from the sources is solid. Don't connect it to anything critical. Don't give it access to your bank account or your main work systems.
Right. Common sense, but worth repeating. Use it in a safe sandbox.
Precisely. Play with it, see what it can do, but be cautious. Keep it contained.
But the possibility.
Oh, the possibilities are huge. Even seeing it work imperfectly, you start to imagine what a more refined version could do. It's really thought-provoking.
Okay, so wrapping up, the big picture is Auto-GPT is a real, tangible step towards autonomous AI agents. Things that can learn and execute tasks, potentially right on your own machine.
That's the essence of it, yeah.
Which leaves us with something to think about.
Always.
If we have these AI agents getting better at learning and acting independently, what does that unlock? What new possibilities or maybe what new challenges are waiting just around the corner for us as individuals and maybe for society too?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Something to definitely mull over. It's going to be a fascinating few years.